During procurement planning, in addition to the procurement management plan, several important documents are created. The procurement planning documents are documents to solicit vendor proposals, seller proposals, source selection criteria, and procurement statement of work. There are many common types of procurement documents that are used to solicit vendor proposals. A request for information, or RFI, which you use to solicit information about the capabilities of prospective sellers. An invitation for bid, or IFB, which is used to solicit competitive prices from prospective sellers. The term bid implies that sellers must compete mainly on price. A request for quotation, or RFQ, in which the buyer asks the seller to supply the price for a simple commercial product or service. A request for tender, also called an RFT or tender notice, in which the buyer's requirements are more complicated but still clearly defined, and a price is a sufficient response. A request for proposal, or RFP, in which the buyer invites the seller to submit a proposal for completing the specified work. And a purchase order, or PO, which is a type of unilateral contract from the buyer to the seller, indicating to the seller that the purchase has been approved. The level of detail in a procurement document is usually proportional to the value of the required product or service and the risk associated with it. So, for higher value procurements, procurement documents usually have more detailed specifications to ensure what is supplied is precisely what you require. Seller proposals are generally received in response to documents to solicit vendor proposals. Proposals may vary in terms of format and content depending on the type of document that was used by the buyer organization to solicit proposals. For example, if the buyer organization submits an RFI or a request for information, they would expect a seller proposal to include the capabilities of the prospective seller. Source selection criteria are the established criteria used to rate the seller organizations proposing to supply the project. The criteria may be used to evaluate how closely the seller's purchase price matches the requirements of the Procurement Statement of Work, or PSOW, or they may be the basis of a more detailed analysis evaluating the seller's technical capabilities, technical approach, past performance, understanding of need, or overall cost. Criteria may be considered equally, or certain areas may be weighted depending on their relative importance to the project. Finally, we will discuss the Procurement Statement of Work, or PSOW. The PSOW is a description of the product, service, or result that will be procured under a specific contract. The purpose of the PSOW is to enable prospective sellers to prepare and submit appropriate offers. The PSOW represents just the portion of work that the vendor will perform from the overall project statement of work, or SOW. A procurement statement of work is based on the description of the work in the scope baseline. It must be detailed enough so that the prospective sellers can determine whether they'll be able to meet the requirements. The actual level of detail in a PSOW will vary depending on the needs of the project and the type of product or service being procured. It will also vary depending on the type of procurement contract being used. The procurement statement of work should describe the buyer's requirements clearly, completely, and concisely. To do this, it includes details about two types of requirements. The PSOW describes the product, service, or result in the most suitable way for prospective sellers. This means listing the mandatory product specifications and features, as well as any optional features. You describe the required quality level and any standards that the product must adhere to. The PSOW also needs to state the supply requirements. Supply information could include the quantity required and the location and timing of delivery. For this reason, you include activity descriptions and scheduling information from the project schedule. Another supply requirement is the type of procurement contract that will be used to manage the supply process: fixed price, cost reimbursable, or time and materials contract.